Hi, everybody. This is Jay Leeper with Behind the Grind, the Pro GM Game Master Chronicles. This is a channel dedicated for interviewing professional game masters, trying to pick up some tricks and trades, and other people of influence in our community. We are lucky today to be able to have my good friend, Will Ramos. And Will's been a professional DM and a role model for me. It's given me a chance to be able to get some insight, and he's always have a lot of information. Will, thank you so much for taking time to visit with me today.
Of course.
If you wouldn't,
Um,
go ahead. I was going to say, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
yeah, so William Ramos, some people call me Will, other people William, and sometimes Bill, which I don't understand that. I don't know how that combines. But for the most part, I've been getting back into the role-playing world again. I started out with Dungeons and Dragons since I was like 8 years old or maybe younger. I can't remember when the cartoon came out, but seems to be a part of my life all this time since. Yeah, I guess one of those things that just sticks with you. And I remember getting into it at 13 while I was going to school and doing homework, and then skipping homework to play D&D. And back in the days when people thought it was a satanic cult. But other than that, it's just not D&D. I've been playing all kinds of different other types of role-playing games for a while, but D&D mainly stuck with me. I did do like novels based on the White Wolf system back in the day for Vampire the Masquerade. Um, I gotten a lot of ideas as far as most of the stories that I've written were in fantasy as well because of D&D. So the only uh, main thing that I can remember from it is I wrote a large novel. I think it's about 500 pages, and it was all based off role-playing games in the fantasy world, using D&D as the foundation. Of course, I do have novels out now, but my Raven universe is sort of based off of some of the gaming that I did in Vampire the Masquerade, but it did veer off quite a bit. Other than that, yeah, I do photography. I've been an artist. I used to try to get into comic books. I even decided to try to be an actor when I was younger as well. Even lived out in the streets of Los Angeles for about a year. I wouldn't recommend it, but yeah, so that was a fun experience, though. You can see the perspective of world in different ways, and that also is an interesting element that you can add to books and writing and such as well, and actually know that you have experience based on that. So yeah, so I started in La Mesa. My first experience was Dungeons and Dragons, and then from there I just kind of grew into other role playing games, and then I moved to back to Stanton, little hometown where I was raised, and then to Midland. Jumped all over the place for a while, maybe over to Dallas. Then I jumped over to California in Fresno. And but first of all, I was in Los Angeles for that year. I lived in the streets. I introduced a lot of people to Dungeons and Dragons. I remember having a game of about 20 people one time.
You play Dragons on the streets.
Yeah, we did. I remember
Wow.
it was a different time when I lived in the streets. I remember there was like kids, a couple of girls were there. I think they were like around 13 or so. I was a teenager. There was other teenagers, and we all looked out for each other, especially the guys. We would try to our best to look out for the girls because you never know what kind of creeps were out there. But yeah, it was an interesting experience, and a lot of people loved it. Everybody like just huddled around. I remember one night we were in a parking garage, and it was in Santa Monica in Third Street Promenade, and one of the cops drove on in, and he saw they were playing, and they got used to us playing there. And he brought us donuts and coffee one night, and he like gave it all out to us and such. And
Wow. That's
yeah,
amazing.
it was pretty interesting. So yeah, so I can say role playing games have been part of my life, yeah, since I was young. So an interesting way to see the world, and hopefully you can use games like that in order to escape certain realities that we're in.
Very fair. What drew you into being a game master?
That's a good question. You know, when I first started D&D, I was a player, and it was a whole new world for me because I loved writing stories and trying to get into comic books and such. I loved watching movies, and I could always imagine me playing this character in movies that's different from what I am, but I loved having those powers and such, or being able to be not locked into, I guess, how we are in reality. We can only do certain things. So our agency in that aspect is kind of limited. But in the game world, you can do a lot. And as a player, I loved that. And I was always a pretty imaginative guy. Even when I was like, what, I think I remember at 4 and 5, I had my entire grandparents' living room because I grew up with my grandparents. I had all the walls drawn on them, and I would create these fantasy worlds where there was forests, unicorns, Pegasus, and I would have like little doors that I would draw, and it's like you can imagine that once you go into this door, you step into this world. And so I had all this stuff, and I would make stories based on what each world was. And of course, my grandparents would come in there and clean everything off. But I don't know. I loved creating a world where people could come in and exist and explore. And when I got introduced to D&D as a player, I figured, you know what? What would this be like if I could create a world? And so I started studying up on it, and I read the books, and I was like, I can do this. And so I started trying to DM. Of course, when I was younger, I wasn't so much into it as we get older. When I was younger, I was just trying to introduce these bad guys and these super villains and killing everybody off because I was like, yeah, this one has this story, man, and yeah, you can't kill this one because it's so powerful and stuff. I didn't want to lose. I didn't want to kill my pretties. Uh, my players probably didn't enjoy that too much, but I didn't know at that time that okay, I'm introducing this world. Not everybody's gonna enjoy everything in my world. They're trying to explore it and not die. They usually don't care about the boss over here. It's like, yeah, you created about 3 days worth of information for your boss, and they're like, okay, let's kill it and move on. What happened with the rest of the information? So yeah, I guess that was the main thing that got me into it. Just being able to share a world with people, and hopefully they enjoy and escape the reality of the world they're in. If they're, might be having a bad day or just want to have fun or experience something different. And I think that's what I try to provide to people is a unique experience that they can escape reality for a little bit.
Okay. Um, do you remember your first time running a game, and how did it go?
I cannot remember the first time. What was my first game?
Well, if you've been playing since you're 8 years old, I can understand that.
Well, I tell you what, I can't remember my exact first game, but I remember testing out a solo. Like it wasn't a solo game, but it was a. I think it was like my first tryout before I would introduce my worlds to people, and I didn't have an actual world. I kind of went off of modules. I do remember it being associated with Dragonlance.
Okay.
It's one of the very first worlds I ran with. I loved the way that the gods were handled. I thought that were pretty mysterious, and to be able to have that kind of entity come and talk to the players, I thought it was just, whoa, that's mind blowing, man. And then the story itself just kind of dragged me in. I remember living in the streets, and I used to go to the Barnes and Nobles that's right there in the corner of Third Street Promenade, going upstairs to the second floor and just staying in the corner and reading all these books about Dragonlance. And I read the whole series just about. and I got a lot of ideas and such, and I started exploring those when I was playing for all the other homeless kids around there. But while I was at home and at my younger age, I remember buying, I think it was a box set, and I can't remember, Taz Sam's or something, box set of D&D. And you have an elf, I think a dwarf, and maybe a wizard. And back then, classes were usually associated with the race that you were playing. And I remember running through the dungeon constantly and figuring out what kind of scenarios were happening. I do remember that, and then I remember, yeah, Dragonlance was the first module or world of TSR back then that I got my feet wet with, and
Okay.
from there I grew my world of Solar.
All right. What's been your most memorable campaign, and why does it stand out to you?
The most memorable campaign. I would say that I like to add a lot of emotion into my NPCs if I find the correct players. You have to kind of mesh with the right players. Otherwise, you're just playing a game for them and you're going to do your best. But when you find the players that mesh with you and really get deep into the story, you can really role play and feel comfortable role playing these characters that you have in your mind because they're also role playing with you and they're matching your vibe. And I used to play with a lot of friends here in Midland, and I think that's where I kind of became associated with D&D. Even when I moved back over here, everybody usually, well, most of the places I go, everybody associates me with D&D because I was the one that first introduced them to
Mm.
D&D. And we were playing in an apartment, and I remember, um, I won't say names just because they might not like it, but I was going to say, I remember playing with my friends, and my goddess Persephina at that time, in the first age of Solar in my world, she wasn't a goddess, but she was just a immortal in a sense. Um, but there was a buddy of mine who was playing an evil character, and he played it really well. He knew how to not bring chaos to the game, but it was a story where it pertained to killing Persephina off and all that that comes with it, with the emotion and such,
Mm.
and all the other players that she died and stuff. It's the first ones where I finally were able to bring the tears out, and they were like tearing up, and so I knew that when I was able to do that, I had achieved a certain ability to story tell and get into the character enough to where I can make them care for it. And when you're writing novels, that's what you really want to do. Get people to care about your characters in a novel. That way, they either get pissed off at you or like cry or whatever when you kill them off. And when I did that in D&D, I was like, okay, so I was able to achieve a certain goal. And after that point in time, I always like tried to keep count of how many times can I bring tears to the guys who are playing.
To be able to evoke that kind of emotion's a big deal. That's hard to do. That's significant. Um,
Yeah,
have
yeah.
you ever had a session that went just completely off the rails, and how'd you handle it?
You know what? I never had too much problem as far as memory is concerned
Okay.
from all the ones that I can remember, but I probably did have ones when that went off the rails when I was younger. And that's a lot of times dealing with friends who weren't really used to playing D&D and such. I remember back in the day, um, playing with certain friends, and we were more into the whole gang thing. So we were more like gangsters. Órale, ese, ¿qué tal? You know, and I've introduced D&D to them, and I think they were just all over the place. They were not going to follow a story or um, anything that has to deal with the actual lore of the world, or just kind of there. Let's kill some things, and it's a different experience than a way of thinking back then, I guess.
Okay.
Nintendo and Sega Genesis, that's okay, but like trying to role play this one with dice and stuff, it was a little maybe out of their league, but it would derail in the sense that they're just gonna go off and try to do whatever. Um, Trying to remember how I handled it. I think maybe I got more annoyed when I was younger, but as an actual DM, once I was older and such, I don't usually have so much that gets derailed because I have in my world, if they're gonna derail something, I still have rules. So if they're gonna do something that's off the beaten path of what they were originally doing, it's like, okay, well, what do y'all want to do now then?
Hmm.
And it's okay because my world already has 30 years of history, and wherever they go or whatever they do, um, like currently, I have a humongous plot arc in a sense of yeah, there's a big like bad guy who's gonna burn the world if nobody stops him. But if you don't want to stop him, all right, well then let the world burn. Who cares? Of course, everybody else would care in the world, but in the sense of like they don't have to stick with that plot in a sense, and they can go and do something smaller. Maybe there's a kingdom over here that has a big bad guy and just dealing with the kingdom, and then can go over there and try to stop him. But if it derails from there, and they say, you know what, we found this troll over here, let's go stop this troll and do something else, or they really want to get derailed and okay, you know what, we killed the sheriff over here. It's like okay, now you killed the sheriff. Okay, so now you're being hunted, and these guys are gonna go now. What's the plot line for that? Survival, escape, so I kind of switched to gears then, and I tried to do that just because I did believe in the idea that this is a living world and we got to have consequences that are going to be real enough, and there is real player death because I don't put resurrection spells in my world. There's only maybe 3 or 4 people in the world who may be able to teach them and know them, and they're pretty high level NPCs, so trying to figure out who that is also a task.
Okay. Who or what inspired your approach to game mastering when you first started? Do you have any role models, any heroes yourself?
I don't know about what inspired me to get started. You know, I did start way back in the day, and we didn't have all this technology and I guess videos and TV shows based on D&D, except for just the cartoons. The only thing I could say is maybe my buddy Mo. He was from when I was 13 and such, the one who first introduced me into an actual game. That would probably become the closest to being inspired, I guess,
Okay.
because he's the one who introduced me, and then I finally got to realize how what it was to actually play as a player. But he was the one that was DMing, and I remember me and my buddy who were playing in it, we were kind of bored because it was taking like forever to walk a trail to get somewhere. But he made it seem pretty real enough because we were, that's what we'll probably do as characters anyway. Um, and he was trying to speak to us. And back then, D&D was so mysterious and new, and it's like, oh, okay, so he's playing a different character. That's crazy, man. What the hell? But I was like, dude, when are we gonna meet more things, man? I want to see what else is out there in the world. And I think for me, just because I was thinking that in my mind is maybe as a DM, I wanted to get that experience stronger for other players, to be a deeper experience. But after that, gosh, I don't really have very many people that inspired me at that certain point in my life. I will say that there were other DMs. I remember one here in Midland. His name was Jack. Me and him, we were like some of the ones that used to host a lot of games, and we have a lot of people playing in those games. And I remembered we'd have back then here in Midland, we would have like what 30 players or so compared to what we have now. Me, I was trying to go around and build this community of D&D players again because everybody plays at their home. But back then we
Hmm.
didn't have technology. Everybody played at the store and stuff. And I would say Jack maybe was another not so much as an inspiration, but gave me a different idea of how other DMs go about things. I think he was the one that, like, if you died, he'd tear your sheet apart, and yeah, your character was completely gone. And he has this exuberant energy, and he was really like just energetic all over the place. And so I got a little bit of an element off of that. But after that, yeah, it was a long run, and I never even knew that in the past last of the 10 years that we've had that there was like such a awakening of Dungeons and Dragons and Critical Role and all that. And you know, I think a lot of people talk about the Mercer effect because of Matt Mercer, and they want certain experience like Matt Mercer does and such. And but there's so many other DMs out there that I can see and how they play is unique style, but just as entertaining as what Matt Mercer provides. But I think Matt Mercer is just like the Bruce Lee of Dungeons and Dragons. He's always they're always going to put him up there just because he's the first one that got to be known, and so with psychology, it comes to be associated with like, oh yeah, he's the number one DM in the world. Um, Kind of like Bruce Lee. It's like, oh yeah, he would never lose a fight. I don't know, man. You get him into some cage matches nowadays,
That
and
is a
then
good
there's
point.
like people, yeah, and then people just disagree and stuff, and it's okay because he's a legend. It's we never got to be in that time with Bruce Lee. I was born in '76, so yeah. Um, I think the same thing with Matt Mercer. You know, he's the one that brought this age of D&D, and he's going to be associated, just like Gary Gygax is going to be associated with the creation of Dungeons and Dragons. He was like, oh, he's the master, man. He knew everything. The game should have been like this.
Good point. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about your philosophy on game mastering. Okay.
Okay.
One of my first questions is how do you balance narrative storytelling with player agency? And I know we've had some discussions on
Narrative
that.
storytelling with player agency. It's interesting. I have to base the narrative on the agency, basically. Uh, I have to see what the players are doing. And like I said, I'm different, possibly compared to a very new DM. A new DM is going to want that narrative. And I also have to create a narrative in my world, of course, because you can't just start from nothing. You have to have things out there that could be interesting, be it locations, be it a scroll that somebody finds, be it a library at the little village that people go visit and they figure out, hey, what's this ancient tome mean?
Hmm.
Um, so you always have the lore already out there. So if they want to get in there, you can have a narrative to give them in a sense of building the elements of story that will lead in a linear fashion following a plot line. Um, because let's face it, agency is where the players can choose whatever. That's usually what that means,
That
right?
is
You want
correct.
to have an immersive story,
Right. We're talking
and
narrative
you also,
storytelling. Other people might crassly refer to it as like railroading or something like that. But what you're
yeah,
saying, I think, has a lot of validity.
yeah, because you don't want to railroad them. And I get it though. There's modules out there that Dungeons and Dragons have put out in other games, of course, and you can't have those out there without having a plot. So you gotta sort of expect a way of railroading. My difference is that yeah, I already have a history. I already have all this. When I write my own modules, of course, I'm gonna have to railroad a little bit because there's no way I can do it. I have
Right.
to pick a certain aspect of my world and that region and give it a story so it can have the tone and specific, like, I guess, element of what you're going to be doing in that book. Otherwise, you just have a book about like, oh, okay, so you can go here, you can go here, you can go here. What do you want, man? And then you just make, I don't know, one shots. But for mine though, when I'm not doing that and people want to jump into my world, I do have one certain thing that might be news that's happening. And I say, yeah, the world is being threatened. Now we haven't had undead for thousands of years. All of a sudden, you hear stories of the undead. I'm not pushing that story. I'm just telling him what it is.
Hmm.
That's what I mean. That's just what's happening according to my progress clocks. My progress clock said this is happening at this certain point in time. If you want to go over there and handle it, go over there and handle it. I so the way to keep it interested, I throw all this information at players so they can have a mysterious or a interest or a need to do something for their characters based on backstory as well. If I read their backstories or try to mix it in, and then I start creating a narrative depending on the what do they call it, emergent
Okay.
story. So the story is emerging, is being created as we speak, and of course there's some people who get way into it literally and say, "Oh, you can't have that because the emergent story has to be in the past tense." It's like no, 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 no. Emergent in this aspect means that you're going to be creating a story based on the agency of the players. And in my world, I make it very easy to do that just because I kept all the different games throughout the history and created that entire lore and timeline. And now I have all these creatures in my world. So I don't have to start from scratch as per se a new DM. And a new DM would have to probably kind of railroad, not all the way, because you're gonna get burnt out if you try to create a world like mine with so many things already built into it. So you kind of have to railroad. Um, I think we have some interesting ideas for one shots, but this is why I hate one shots, is because you have to railroad them, and you only have like 3 hours sometimes to get these people from point A. I mean, from point A to point B, in a sense of like, okay, what do you want to do? Okay, you want to do this? No, I really want to go over here and figure out what that castle over there is. It's like, I made a mistake. I didn't really mean to say castle. Really nothing there. That's like the shape of a. It's the mountain. It's just shaped like a castle. That's what that really is. It's like you really want to go over here,
Ooh, that
So
mountain shaped like cancel. I might want to go check that out now.
yeah, exactly right. Now you really it's just going off the rails now for you.
Right. Okay. What's your approach to dealing with challenging or disruptive players at your table?
Challenging or disruptive players.
I'd imagine if you're
For
running
one
games
shots,
on
for one
a
shot.
street, you're going to have some interesting characters there. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Back when I was younger, yeah. When I was younger, I didn't have the experience to figure out how to control that very much. Usually, when I'm having just games with friends and being fun, I don't really mind the disruptive players if everybody else is going to be in on the fun and they're pretty much enjoying it in a sense. But if it's a game that we really want to get into and I have a disruptive player, then yeah, should have brought water. Um, the Well, when I was younger, I would try to figure out a way to deal with it in a sense of like, all right, let's talk about this. What's going on? Nowadays, I give them like a talking to, maybe two, but after that, I'm like, no, this is not going to do anymore. I can't have this. I'm putting in way too much work into this to be able to have somebody go in there and just keep disrupting, and nobody else is enjoying what they're trying to get into it.
okay.
Um, and granted, this also like what the definition of a disruptive player is. Some people have a different aspect than that. What would your
It's
idea of it
open.
be?
It's an open question. I mean, I've had one person talk about somebody being drunk at the table. Another person, especially as a pro GM, and you're dealing with personalities that you don't know very well, or people coming in and out and stuff like that. Somebody might want to come in and be a attention hog, or you know trying to start fights with the other players and to go PvP or something of the sort. I mean, are you okay with that? Do you tolerate that, or do you like nix it in the
Oh
bud?
no, if they're doing it like intentionally and anything that has to do with PvP, I do allow PvP. But before anything is going to be, I have a Sunday campaign, and we know that there's a character there who is kind of racist in a way because he's an orc. But we always talk before we go live on the cam and say, okay, so this is the way I'm role playing as
Right,
a
right.
character. I want to make sure that everybody's fine with this, and we're going to be able to keep going. And if a fight breaks loose, it's all in game. But then out of character after the game, everybody's laughing and enjoying it and all that stuff.
Okay.
So that we allow, but we have to like make sure that we talk about it. Aside from that, if it's an actual disruptive player, then yeah, it would have to be a whole different aspect where like I'll talk to him, and if he does it twice and then it's gone, I can't. Yeah, I don't have the time to.
Spoiling your fun and spoiling everybody else's. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah,
Do you, do you think as a game master, do you think a game master should prioritize the story, the rules, or the player's enjoyment? Why?
as a game master,
As a
prioritize
professional game master, should you prioritize the story that you're telling, the rules of the game, or the player's enjoyment?
rules.
Okay.
Um, a lot of people disagree with this. Um, a lot of people believe that a dungeon master is there to make sure that everybody has fun, and I say no, that's not your responsibility at all. Fun is not your responsibility. The only responsibility you have is to provide a world where people could have fun.
Okay.
And because if you have a bad day and you're going to be at the game and you're just not feeling it, it's not my responsibility to focus on you while I have all these other players and be like, hey, this character goes up to you and then your character is completely acting different because based on the way that maybe you got fired from the job or something. Um, and I'm over here trying to get you into the game and stuff. That's not going to be my responsibility. I'm not going to be able to make you have fun because I just can't change your mood that day. Can you? It's a possibility, yeah, but you know that falls on the player and the mentality that they want to experience on the game. If they're going to just keep bringing in what happened during the day, you're not going to be able to change it. You are providing a tool of sorts to try to change it. If you put the once you put a world out there for them to try to escape reality. But I believe without rules being the first thing that you put out there, you really don't have a game. Nothing can be played. There's no set boundaries without rules. And when you don't have them, all you're doing is playing for like when you were playing when you were kids, and you imagine, okay, my Geo Joe is kicking your bad guy Optimus Prime because he Optimus Prime decided to become evil and stuff, and it just goes into chaos because you just kind of going by the seat of your pants, right? You have to have rules for it to be fun, and then also if something goes wrong, you have to be able to punish characters, not punish in a way of like negative, but you have to be able to have consequences that based on those rules. And you can't do that without first having them. That's got to be the number one. How are you gonna have fun if you don't have rules? I guess you're just there, and even Cards Against Humanity have rules, you know. Um, so all games out there, why are we reading a book? Because we have to read the rules first, right? The first thing we have to do is figure out how to play, how to the game goes, and then play. And yeah, so yeah, rules.
Okay.
Rules would be my first.
So, as a professional game master, how do you create a sense of immersion for your players? How do you get them hooked?
A sense of immersion. I would have to say NPCs is my first go-to. Uh, I think you saw my charts that I created and
Yes,
how
yes, yes,
detailed
yes.
I get to separate my personality and biases from my NPCs. I could not do that when I was younger, and I knew I had that problem, and so I was the same character over and over again. It was just me, but in a different way. With now with this, it kind of helps me get that immersion. So in the games that I'm playing right now, what I try to do is look at Discord and see how people are reacting to certain things. Maybe a dinosaur gets killed, and the druid that created the dinosaur and awakened the dinosaur is gonna have an emotional connection to them. Maybe maybe an elf child is in an arena and about to get killed by the group, and then some of the groups want to save her, other ones want to use her as a slave or whatever. But that's all based on her personality, and I really tried to push that personality out there to get that immersion, because you can have all types of details. You can have the immersion through sounds, taste that you can describe. As your foot steps on a dry piece of wood, it cracks and echoes through the spooky wooded forest that's, completely silent and absent of any animal noises. You're creating mood and creating that immersion. But the ultimate thing that as humans here in the real world, we always still have to be, unless you're going to become a hermit and crazy, you always have to be around. We're social creatures. So we have to have an ability to bounce things off of other characters in the game. And I do believe NPCs are the first things that you have to work out, aside from the world, of course. You have to immerse them into the world and the lore. So I would say character, and then world lore, and then the actual tangible idea of walking through your scenarios and scenes of that world. So that would probably be my
Fair enough. That works.
idea.
Okay, so this is one of our most controversial questions. All right, you ready for this? What's
Hmm.
your stance on fudging dice rolls as a game master?
Fudging dice rolls. um, I fudge dice rolls very, very rarely do I do it, but the only time I will fudge dice rolls is if they can pull off a very, very good flair for the scene, and they describe what they're doing and they look like they're very happy and excited about doing it. And if they are, I'll let them have it. I won't ruin that experience for them because they think that something has already happened. They're into it. Like, yeah, yeah. They're waiting for that one exciting moment. But a lot of times, I try my best to keep to what the roles uh, have,
Okay.
so that way I can follow the rules. And a lot of times they build that experience off of that because I'm not breaking the rules so much. Now I do fudge rolls, like I said, for that one experience, and then the other experience is if sometimes I'll fudge it in the way for the boss. And the only way I do that is that if I know that the boss is already going to be close to, I wonder if any of the players are going to watch this. The only time I do this is if I think they have already won, but they're in the cusp of like worrying and in like fearing, and it's like so scared. It's like, oh my god, we don't kill them, we're all gonna
Right,
die,
right, right,
man.
right.
So I'll fudge a few rolls for like maybe saves or attacks or whatever. But in my mind, I sort of know that, oh yeah, okay, they'll be able to survive this. The monster is already dead. I'm not gonna tell them that. Um, and then I'll like say, "Oh yeah, he attacks you, man. He attacks you for 50 points of damage." It's like, "Oh, dude, I only have like two more points left. What are we gonna do, man? What are we gonna do?" And then somebody else is gonna try to attack, and it's like, "Oh man, I missed," because like I made the save, but I really failed the save. But I make the save. It's like, "Oh man, yeah, this monster is like really going for it, man. It's staying. Just, it's like just raging, man. It's just, yeah, it's adamant. It's gonna not die." And then finally, this one will do the last hit. It's like, oh shit, how did you do that, man? You got him. It's like, oh yeah, we got him. Thank God, dude. I didn't have any spells left. I wasn't know what to do. That was the last of my healing spells, and
Uh,
it builds that ending
nice.
better.
All right. Let's switch gears again. Now we're going to go to crafting worlds and narratives. Now I know this is something that you have a lot of experience with, and you do a lot of work with this. But in the beginning, what is your approach to world building for your campaigns? Do you start from top down or do you start from bottom up?
Hybrid, actually.
Fair.
Um, I know how I would do it if I were to give new DMs, and I assume you would ask this question as an advice to new DMs.
Absolutely.
I would go from bottom up, if possible. The only reason I say that is it could be a little bit easier, and I think this advice is out there already everywhere. Um, Create your small village first, and then create the NPCs and the locations first that they're gonna visit, so they already have at least a quick starting point. And then just do a very, very general idea of the entire lore of the world that you're trying to imagine um, into existence.
Okay. Well,
And
which let me bring
uh,
you to this question that kind of ties into it then. You mentioned earlier about your NPCs being needed to make it an immersive world. How do you go about creating a memorable NPC?
a lot, no?
Right?
You definitely got to have that depth. And I know that's a pretty general answer, but they have to be alive. Um, they have to have something that they really hate or that they really like about the character. So, I'm similar to the video that you probably watched. I have to know the personality of that character.
Okay.
I can't go anywhere. I don't have a direction to go unless I know the personality of that character. The way I write my books, I gotta figure out the personality of the character, and I know what they're gonna do in it. Personality tells me how they're gonna do it. So in D&D, it's the same thing. You can have a good princess or an evil princess. Um, they're gonna do things evil and they're gonna do things good, but personality is the one that tells you how they're gonna do it and present themselves to the characters. I have one princess in my world. She's like one of the main princesses of, and she was captured, but she was the princess of Polaria. And even though she was captured, they still want to rescue her. But the reason I say this is because she was very off-putting in a way. She was
Hmm.
very standoffish, and she was like one of the characters would come by and she would immediately be like, "Oh dear, you again. What do you want? What are you going to annoy me with today? What millions of questions do you have for me? Quickly now, I have things to do." And and so she was like annoying to them. And she was like, "You simpletons just don't understand the pressure that I'm under." And so, so from there, and then you have another princess who's a little bit more charismatic in a sense.
Hmm.
Um, Getting back to her though, the reason that they still would like to help her and save her is because even though she was standoffish, she also her personality also said that she would help any person in need. So what would happen if she saw a person in need? Well, she would do her best because of her convictions of what she believes that she's saving her people in her kingdom, and she would give her life for them, and she almost did for this group even though she was standoffish. So that builds what does that build? That builds personality, but that also builds that little bit of um, it looks like she hates you, but then she'll give her life to you. Contradiction.
Okay.
So it builds a little bit of contradiction. So what does that mean? It means it's a complex character now. Why is she talking to me this way and is so with me and doesn't even want to hear me speak, but yet she's going to give her life for me? That doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean?
I do.
And then you got this other character who kind of is more charismatic, but would she give her life for you? Who knows? You haven't seen that in action yet. She's like, "Oh, hi, yes. My name is Princess Fiona. How are you doing?" That is very lovely. I'm glad that you are giving me this advice. I know my sister's a little bit more standoffish, but I like to get advice from everyone. What was your name again? So
Right.
she's more charismatic. She'll talk to you. She'll try to make the world about you. So that builds personality. And that's what I say is to be able to know what your NPCs are going to be. You got to work on the personalities first.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily like lawful evil or whatnot. Lawful evil kind of tells your more morals and ethics, but personality is going to tell you how you present those morals and ethics.
And that's where your charts and everything come in handy that you use, correct?
Correct.
All right. We'll
Correct.
make sure
Yeah.
that we put a link to your tutorial for your charts, but also if you have your charts, we'll include a link for that as well because I think people would definitely benefit from that.
I hope so. It is very in-depth video. Hopefully they stick around for it all because it's a long video.
I think it's
Really, I
only
could
like
probably
45 minutes.
shorten
It's not that bad. It's
it.
good. When I looked at it, it helped me out a lot. I found it to be very engaging. So it was good.
And I do plan to publish them eventually, either by themselves or in the big module I'm working on, depending
Okay.
on how many pages it gets.
Very cool. All right. So now I'm going to shift gears again to go into. I'm going to pivot into GM questions, pro GM questions. This is where again our audience is pro GM wannabes like me, and this is a chance to be able to learn from veterans like you. So it'll be a good thing. You're definitely by far the most successful professional GM in our area, definitely our region. So this is a good thing.
Maybe I don't know, but hopefully, let's
All right.
see.
So what does the day in a pro GM look like?
Really, a lot of work of trying to. How can I explain it? Okay, so I do photography. When I get a pro game going, though, I have to set a block of time. The reason I do that is because I'm going to dedicate this to you guys who are playing in my game. So, what does that mean? Well, there's a difference between photography. We have slow months, let's just say, and this could be for anything out there. Obviously, other people are going to have other professions, but for me, I have photography, and I have ups and downs in this particular area.
Mm-hmm.
So on January is very slow. Most of my money right now is coming in from my pro games. So my pro games, though, because I know they're more consistent, I will set a day and then I'll stop photography for that day. Yes, so I can work around my pro games. And just so people know what's the difference between having fun and playing a fun game, because this is a question asked and brought up. It's like, why am I going to pay for this? It's a big debate out there.
Mm-hmm.
Some people hate pro gaming and all that stuff. Well, I can make $300 in an hour doing photography versus $100 for 4 hours doing pro gaming, right? And that's if everybody shows up. But it's consistent compared to certain months it might be dead for me. So I'm consistent and I treat it like an actual uh like if it would be an actual job. I enjoy it, so it's not a job for me right
Mm-hmm.
now unless I get overburdened, but I will dedicate my time, and then in the day of, I'm creating the maps, I'm creating the lore, I'm creating the personality for the NPCs you're going to meet. I'm creating if there's going to be traps. I'm looking at your backstories. I'm going line by line to see how I can weave your backstories into the world and into the game. I'm trying to figure out your requests. Is it possible? Because you are paying for this game, so I want you to have as much fun as possible within the rules of everything else, of course. And so I'm gonna try to get to your requests as much as I can. Try to help out with the character as much as I can. Now, granted, I'm busy photography months. It's hard for me to do that when they're trying to do unique things for the characters. But
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, the rest of that is based on the rules. That's what I'm working on, trying to get. So if I don't answer certain stuff that's requiring of the homebrew stuff that you're trying to get for your characters, because I'm working on the story for your characters already, for everybody in that game. But eventually I will get to your character in a sense that I put more priority over them than I do my fun games. because my fun games are still just my fun games. You know, I'm playing with my friends. I'm still adding to the world and stuff. It's still inside the actual world that they're playing with.
Playtesting.
Yeah, but one of them I'm having fun. The other one I am still having fun with my pro games, but I dedicate more time to it. So yeah,
Okay.
it's a lot of work with all those different lists of things that I do with it.
Okay. So what kind of challenges do you face? I mean, it sounds like that your pro gaming is more supplemental. Can you see a time in which it'll be more of your primary income?
I'm aiming to, but photography is still my primary income, so I'm afraid to add more slots to what I have. If everybody shows and every single pro player pays me um, the rate uh, for the game, I do believe I could bring in. Let me see. At the best, I could bring in maybe 1,100 a month.
Okay.
At the average, I would bring in about 800 maybe. Um, but that's right now everybody was sick. There are certain people that have to redo schedules. Sometimes they drop out, so you have to fill in certain spots again. So that's would be one challenge right there is keeping up the spots and keeping it consistent.
How many pro sessions
Uh,
do you run a week?
Currently, right now, I run 3 pro, then 2 regular.
Okay.
So 5 sessions right now currently, because I have to try to leave a lot of days open for photography still. And Saturdays is definitely for photography. I can't fill in those because those are my wedding days or other big events.
Makes sense.
Um, so yeah, the challenge is trying to keep it consistent. I would say because the players to drop out. Not everybody's going to enjoy your style of game, and that's okay. I wouldn't want them there if they're not enjoying the game. I wouldn't. I would feel bad about taking their money. I was like, yeah, man. It's just like, no, go ahead, go elsewhere. It's cool, man. I don't care. Um, so keeping it consistent and maybe timing. Yeah, you just got to find the time to be able to create all that stuff for everyone. So if I would run 5 pro games a week, I would definitely have to have things pre-prepared. And I think with what I'm doing right now with my fun games and all that, I can do that and have things that are already created in the world. If I play in the world where it's South Angoria or North Angoria, I have a lot of stuff that I can already have pre-prepared. I play something like in my other continents, I
Mhm.
don't have a lot of stuff. I would have to start creating because most of my 30 years have always been in the human union, a little bit in the elf union, never in the orc union. So I have one game in the orc union. So most of that I have to kind of pre-create and also create on the fly.
I can definitely see that. Makes sense. Um, so how do you handle no shows? When a person decides you're anticipating the showing, you're anticipating the income, but they don't show. How do you dress it?
um, you just have to deal with it. My biggest thing is that if we have enough of a group to where we can still go on. Um, if I have like 3 people missing, I'll just cancel the game for that
Okay.
because there's no bounce off of each other. And my pro games, like a Friday game that I have, most of those all have their own individual identities already. That if one of them is missing, we can still go on, but it's still kind of an interesting difference in dynamic when they're gone. Um,
So no punishment to the player or stop talking to him or something like that.
well, no, no, no. If they do like no shows, most of the time they usually let me know anyway
Okay,
for
and that
pro
makes sense.
games.
Yeah.
Especially if they're like paying and doing all that, they'll let me know for sure. I haven't had one yet that's done it, so knock on wood. But if they consistently do no shows, then yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
From your experience, what are the paying players' expectations? What are they expecting to get out of the game?
Expectations usually. I try to sit down and I every so often as the game is going by. I'll try to ask how everybody's enjoying, so I can try to get and grasp an idea of expectations. But everybody's like seems to be like, oh yeah, we're having fun. It's like, oh, well, I know you're having fun, but as far as expectations, and I think most of the time I get it through the backstories and the stories that they send me. When they're writing stories, like Swift, he's one of the characters in my Friday campaign. He's doing a lot about his backstory, where he came from, his father, and stuff. So I kind of start generating an idea off of that, and it's like, okay, so maybe I can do a little bit more on this direction as well, and start weaving this information in there. And I tried to guesstimate at their expectations. If Session zero, I can't quite get it out of them, especially for new players. Some pro players are actually barely getting into it, and they didn't find some games, and they're like, you know what? Let me try this platform here, and so they get into it, and they're like, don't know what to expect. Sometimes people just figure, oh, I expect just to go here, figure out what D&D is, and try to experience this new world, and they don't really have expectations. Other people might have expectations and be wanting to do more with like building a. I want to build this very strong, powerful guy. So he's a min maxer. So I'm like, okay, so if he's going to be a min maxer, I'm going to have to figure out how to balance that out with all the other players. And they expect to try to find magical items. They expect to try to find, you know, things that can up their skill levels and their strengths and such like that. That's what they're expecting. And so, yeah, if I can't get it out of them, I sort of have to guesstimate. And if they're not starting to have fun, then I have to push a little bit harder and say, okay, so what are you expecting? What is it that you're looking for?
Mhm.
um, what, if anything, do you wish to achieve maybe in 3, 4 levels? So that way I can have at least an immediate kind of idea of what to do in the game. And then after that conversation, hopefully it kind of gives me a little bit better definition.
No, that's cool. Okay, so let's talk about the role of the online TTRPG community. What do you think is the biggest challenges facing professional game masters in the modern TTRPG community? What do you see as your issues, challenges?
I think same as any other profession out there, saturation. Um, the same thing that I see with YouTube videos happening right now, saturation. In 2014, there wasn't a lot of people out there. As soon as Critical Role came out, as far as just concentrating on YouTube videos and videos out there weren't very many things out there as far as when people wanted to get into DMing or game mastering or such. Now you have books everywhere. You have third party publishers everywhere. You have big shows like Critical Role. You have them making shows on Amazon. You have the movie Dungeons and Dragons. Now we've had them before, but now it's starting to have a little bit more light onto them. We have more fantasy things that were based off Lord of the Rings. All this is coming together when in the 90s and stuff there wasn't that much. You just played. You didn't know how to DM. You had to go to your local store and maybe somebody would take you under their wing. Now they're just everywhere. You can't type anything out there. And then of course my enemy and friend AI, can give you so many so many things out there and tools that really you don't have to really know what to do about certain things. You just type in a question and it answers it for you. And I did finally figure out the drug of chat GBT.
Thank you. Welcome to
And I
the
was like
21st century.
amazed at every question that I asked at what it could answer. And I was like, holy cow, this is weird, man. Took my job. No. But so saturation, I think, is going to be, in my opinion, um, the big deal in the future. And only it's going to be like a battle for survival of the fittest.
Okay.
And like photography's in my area is so saturated here, and that's why I'm like dying right now because it gets slow. And new people are constantly coming into, let's say, like photography, so they make the price range for everybody like very low, especially within that kind of market that they're in. The ones who are already out there and been doing it for years and have a big name out there for photography and know they're good, not so much that they have to battle on pricing anymore, because pricing is like professional DMing. Pricing, once you go into having to fight for pricing, you know that there's a problem for the market in general. Because anybody could come in there and say, okay, I'm doing everything for $5. Now you're like, oh, okay, but how good are you? Now you have to really figure out how to be really good. But then if you're really good, you're still a dummy in the dust. Nobody knows how good you are until they play a few sessions with you.
Right.
And for some people, it might take a few sessions to figure out that you're really good. And the first two sessions might be bad. Maybe you weren't doing as well for some reason, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this guy sucks, man. Let's get him out of here." It's not until you get into your maybe your NPCs and or into your strong points of DMing that you show off. Um, and I can see that with videos, a lot of people were leaving YouTube now because there's already no market for the idea of giving more information. Every information that people ask about is already out there, in a sense. That only leaves maybe personality and entertainment, and not so much information.
Right.
And I think with in 2020 when everybody was home and doing nothing, it blew up for gaming online, and professional GMs just took off. Then we're almost what 5 years now.
Hmm.
5 years of nothing. That's fast. Jeez, God, time flew.
Right.
Um, 5 years into it, everyone is wanting to do it now. We got so many people going out there and playing it, and then you got a lot of people who are just playing nothing but free games. So you got so many people that are learning how to DM that is filling in the market now, because now we got actual. Back then, you didn't have very many DMs in 2020, so you were making a lot of money. And now we got a lot of DMs because of the YouTube videos. So if the YouTube video says that there's nothing else to learn because we already got everything out there, well, then that means that there's a lot of more game masters and whatever games being put out there. That means that there's going to be more free games for everybody to choose. And because there's more free games, and now there's also a lot more DMs trying to get into the professional area, there's going to be more saturation. And not only that, you have to compete with the free games now. So, yeah, I can see that problem in the future.
Okay. Um, what advice would you give aspiring GMs looking to make a name for themselves online? You know, like me.
That's a tough one just because I haven't made a name for myself online. So, I don't know. Really, that's what I'm trying to do, and the way I'm doing it is just do what I love. Um, I figured if I keep doing what I love and try to share that with other people out there, not doing it, I want to do it and make money out of it, but I still love doing it.
Mm.
Photography was the same way. Um, I started out in Los Angeles, but I did photography for glamour photography, of course. So I loved working with models out there, and I enjoyed it. So did I make money on it? Yeah, eventually I got to the point where I was making money of it, and I didn't feel like it was work. I was always excited to get somewhere and start shooting. Um, even if I had, even if the model needed help going into a beach and walking a mile carrying all her luggage on my back along with mine, I was still like, dude, this is pretty cool though. So yeah, D&D game mastering and all that is still fun for me. So I'm trying to make videos like my flow charts. I enjoy
Yeah.
my flow charts, and once they actually work, I enjoy seeing something that I created actually work in my game. Which over years to do something like that was a lot of work trying to make it make sense. So it works for me at least. Hopefully, it works for other people and they think it works. But Yeah, that's the best recommendation. I say just do what you love, and hopefully it gets you there because it seems what other people do in their own respective genres of videos that they make out there.
Okay. Last question, and then we'll get on to kind of signing things off. Where I want a chance to be able to pick your brain on a couple other things. But what's your vision for the future of tabletop RPGs, and how do you see yourself contributing to that evolution?
Um, I can see how I can see myself contributing. I'm gonna try to contribute some of World of Solar. It's interesting because when I saw Critical Role and they put their world out there, I was like, man, I had an idea like that that I wanted to do with my world for the longest time, and I started it with novels. But instead, I took a little bit of a turn and went with the novels I published based on Vampire the Masquerade instead of the D&D ones. And the reason for that is because all my stuff for all three books that I was writing for D&D got stolen, and I got burnt out from writing for about 10 years. Um, until Raven came along, and I said, Raven needs to live. She's knocking on my brain like a little demon until I write the story, so I guess I might as well do that. And Solar is the same thing. I think I'm getting on in my years, and I think, you know what? I need to make Solar memorable. I got so many friends that are always wanting to play in my world. I got all these gods. Enjoy playing these gods because in my world, gods actually mean something. And when you follow one, you get a certain feat now. 5E at least allowed that, and that was pretty cool. Um, they deserve to have a story told, and I hope that other GMs out there can tell the story and love telling the story. At least that's my hope with it, to share this world out there. And the characters are loved enough to be able to do that. And that's my job right now, is try to throw that into the world and get the world to see this and test it out. And will they be receptive or not to them? I hope they're receptive and accept them. If not, well, I tried.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my contribution, is maybe give another world that people can play that hopefully is a little bit different, especially regarding how gods are portrayed, because there's thousands of them out there, and you can follow any one of them, and the lore is the only difference that's behind it. But with these, they actually make you have a certain difference. They help the character a certain way because of the blessings that they give. So the future of tabletop role playing is actually going to be interesting. There's a lot of change I think that's going to happen, and there's going to be a lot of division. I see it in the YouTube right now, and you'll see the battleground happening. Um, I don't want to mention certain words. I don't know, but I would say that it's. I think they're getting politicized, and I wish they wouldn't. It's like, all right, we can do everything political out there, but politics nowadays is in all our, and everything that we do, politics is in it.
It's
And I
divisive. You're right.
and I hate that it's for D&D now. Um, I wish they would just leave the game alone and let D&D be D&D, um, and such. Let it be, that same kind of quality that it started with when it was the whole fantasy thing, and people were having fun because it was unique and mysterious and whatnot. But as far as all the other games, I think it could be similar to what's happening with D&D. I think, yeah, my fear is that politics are gonna get more into it, and we shouldn't allow that.
Well,
Politics has
that's
to get
actually a
more.
topic for our behind the dice. Is that right? The sub
Yeah,
the beyond
beyond the
the
dice.
yeah beyond the dice. So that's going to be an interesting thing that we're going to be talking about tomorrow. That we'll put out there on your channel, your YouTube channel. So
Yeah,
that's going to be interesting. I've been thinking about that, and I think that's going to be a fun topic for us to square off on. So I get to be the bad guy, which I'm totally good with.
actually, you might be a good guy this time.
Right. All right. Well, there's a good tie things up a little bit. Just tell us a little bit about plug your game, plug your website, your start playing games thing. I mean, just feel free to self promote here.
You know what? I don't know the link exactly there.
I will put it on there. I will take care of that.
Yeah,
I'll
you'll
have it on
put it
there.
on there.
I will.
Yeah. and start playing games and such. That's the platform that kicked off in 2020 when everybody was home. They picked a really good time, I would say. I do have certain fears about it, but yeah, this where I play. Uh, a World of Solar. I currently got one game going. I think I have one more open slot. I'm very particular if I'm gonna fill it because that means I would have 6 games going a week. Um, I think I'm DM Ramos or DM William on there. Either that or WJR Parks. I have so many names. Um, but aside from that, of course, our YouTube channel, you can usually follow that for Dungeons and 20s, all based on Solar and such, and also where I give my process of how you told me to get back into my process with float charts and other ideas of how I create my personalities for NPCs, and then also other aspects of my DMing that I do personally in order to get a good immersive world out there. Um, Website, I do have a World Anvil, but I don't have one particularly with the actual domain name because it's like what, 30, $40 a month or something. So I just kind of used a little medium tier one.
That works, totally works. All right, all good. Well, listen, I want to thank you again, William, for taking time to visit with me and the community. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, Pro GM wannabes, check out his website. I mean, his resources that he has on there are valid, they're useful, and they're applicable, and they're definitely worthwhile. Um, William, thank you again for taking time to visit with me. I have had a great time. I think the world of you, and I'm excited to see where things are going to go for us going forward, especially for your pro GME experience and stuff like that. Just having a chance to be able to watch. You're a very gifted storyteller. You got a lot of things definitely to offer the world.
Oh, thank you. Enjoyed being here. Thank you for having me.
Folks, like I said, we'll have all the links. I want to encourage you to like, subscribe. What is it? Click like, subscribe, and just kind of help. I know, right? I'm one of those guys now. And, like I said, we were looking for involvement. So down in the comments and stuff like that, give us your thoughts on the show. Give us a little bit of thoughts on what you'd like to see us do for topics. If you know other GMs, you might want to suggest for us to visit with, or if you're a professional GM and you want to contribute to the education of the newbies like me, we're really good with it. So again, guys, thank you so much for checking this out, and we'll see you on the next time. God bless.